You're listening to What She Said on Canada Talks.
Hello there. As we were saying earlier, relationships are complicated things, whether it be a relationship with a spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, with your children, with your friends, with your neighbors, and of course professional relationships as well. And sometimes, if we were all the same, then life would be really boring. So there's going to be some kind of a conflict. And depending on how you approach that, really determines the outcome. And most of us are not really good at that. We think if we're right, we're right. So that's all that needs to be said. And it's not. It's positioning very often. And I've learned that over the years, Sharon. I have.
Yeah, we get better as we get older sometimes.
I think we get better. But we have an expert here now, Lauren Millman, who is a communications coach, and this is really what she specializes in. So, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so how often do you think that negotiations go off the rails just because of positioning?
Positioning is really important, and relationships go off the rails a lot. What you have to do when you find yourself in a situation where it's going off the rails is take a step back and breathe. We don't want to react, we want to think, and we want the outcome to be beneficial and win-win for everybody.
So how important is being right?
That's a great question. We all want to win. Winning is big, but winning isn't the ultimate outcome. The ultimate outcome is ensuring that everybody gets what they want in the end. And going into it with a certain mindset and perspective is important too. So depending on your positioning is going to determine where you end up.
And I guess, sometimes you have conflict and you say, I am not going to put up with whatever, and I don't care about the consequences. That is, I am more interested in this than I am in preserving this relationship. But if you are interested in coming out the other end with that relationship intact, what would be your advice? What are the steps people should go through? Because it's a process, because you coach this.
Right. So what we don't want to do is react. It's human nature to react. Physiologically, we're set up to go into fight or flight and defense mode. And this is going to cause failure every single time. So what we want to do is we want to position ourselves in such a way that we're listening and acknowledging and validating the other person's feelings. We can save what we think is right for the end or for the conversation. But what we don't want to end up doing is getting into an argument where, arms are flailing, we're yelling and we're screaming, and the only thing that we're out for is the win, is the kill. It's got to be a conversation. So there are certain steps that we can take to engage in that conversation and have it be beneficial.
Right. How difficult is it for you as a relationship coach, though, to sometimes come into this situation at its critical point where people are almost shutting down their communication entirely?
Right. So I see this a lot. I experience it in my own life. I've got 3 kids, a husband. We're very, very busy. We need 28 hours in our day. The first thing to remember is to take a breath and breathe, and to just know that this is going to be worked out. But there's got to be buy-in. You have to be prepared to have a conversation and to listen more than you talk. That's the first step.
Now, are you able, when you talk to your clients, to identify different styles? For example, I'm a person, I've been accused of, I will take the high road, and I will let people not walk I don't need to win. I don't need to be right. I just want peace. I don't like adversarial conflict. I don't like conflict at all. I know other people who need to be right.
Oh yeah,
right.
And they'll do anything and say anything, and some people fight below the belt, and some people don't, and some people, are passive aggressive, and some people aren't. I mean, how important is it to be able to identify that before you start the process?
I think it's very important to identify what type of a person you are and what sort of a personality you carry into an argument or an altercation. And if if you want to have a positive outcome in the end, I think it's really important to understand that you've got to take a step back and park the ego, and to really allow yourself to engage in a conversation with somebody and listen to what they have to say, and know that your word in the end is going to be heard, but it's a two-sided conversation.
Now, do you think that, because obviously conflict and whether or not we learn how to work with our conflict tolerance and our need to actually get into conflict to begin with, I think that can often result in the death of relationships, including whether that be friendship or whether that is a marriage and then ending a divorce. Do you think that for couples who are dating and get engaged, it is important maybe to go into a premarital counseling phase where you start to really learn these things ahead of time, be preemptive?
I sure do, Sharon. I think it's really important to be preemptive about any kind of engagement that you're going to be getting, and especially marriage or moving in with somebody, and to learn, not so much the tricks of the trade, but to be armed with skills and techniques so that when you're up against a situation that you don't really know how to handle and you feel like you're going to go into fight or flight and react instead of respond, that you have these capabilities.
So why do you think, though, people are so stressed about the idea of going into a premarital counseling situation? I mean, the stakes become very high. Once you actually, whether it's moving into, even just moving in together, or whether it's an actual marriage, the stakes are very high.
Right. So, that's the nice thing about what coaching is. As a relationship coach, this is what I do. And coaching doesn't come with a lot of the stigma and the perceptions that we've seen traditional therapy or going to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist about. These people are all wonderful, wonderful people, but you've got to find the right fit. So finding somebody like myself, or a professional coach, is probably more of a way to go and more of a comfort zone for you, just in order to get trained on what to do when.
Well, it's like we're making a huge investment within our lives. The same way you make an investment financially, you're making an investment in another person emotionally and in many other ways. You are listening to What She Said on Sirius XM 167 Canada Talks. Sharon Caddy, Christine Bentley, and our guest Lauren Millman, and we are talking about relationships. If you would like to join our conversation, I meant to mention you're invited. You got a phone nearby, 1-855-958-8255. Once again, that's 1-855-958-8255.
And it's a toll-free number.
Yeah.
And Lauren, now one of the other things is you also are an author, a best-selling author, and you blog. And you had one blog that went viral, and Sharon, I'm just not sure that we can even can we even say the title? I mean, we're not R-rated here.
Well,
it's a family station.
You can alter the title.
Okay. Okay, well, actually, because it isn't a rude word,
right,
as it turns out, Lauren, but it's called Go F Yourself, Mars and Venus Guide to Marriage, Separation, and Divorce. And what does that F stand for?
So the F stands for find. Go find yourself. So we find ourselves when we're having altercations with other people and we're fed up because we're not effective arguers, that we end up using that word in a not so nice manner. But really, I think that if we end up taking a good, serious, authentic look at ourselves and we find out who we really are, what we stand for, and who we want to become, that we're better armed to get into these relationships and have positive outcomes, have good relationships.
Now, do you find that divorces or are the mainstay of what you counsel, or is it business relationships, or what are the most common?
So I do a lot of interpersonal relationship coaching. I coach with two hats. Half of it is a proper coaching hat, and the other half is a therapy or therapeutic hat. I want to take people from where they are to where they want to be. And typically, I see people who are in marriages who don't want to leave because leaving is hard and it's expensive, and ultimately in most people's heart of hearts, they don't want to leave, they want to stay. They just need to find tools and strategies to help them get through the difficult times. I do separation and divorce. I see people who are having problems with dating. I deal with parents with children. I'm an Asperger's support coach. There's not many of us around, and I do that too. So, but anything that has to do with your interpersonal relationships, fallout with a girlfriend, a boss.
So now we look at, you talked about moving ahead and dating if you've gone through a divorce, a separation, or just a breakup of a long-term relationship. People, I think, tend to, especially as we get older, think, well, I can just move into this because I've learned from what went wrong in my life. But then again, every relationship is new and the dynamic is different. So we shouldn't really move forward and just say, well, I learned from my last one, so I know what to do this time, right?
Right. There's a grieving process. Just like when we lose somebody passes, there's a grieving process. And I think a lot of us bow to pressure. You should be dating. Why aren't you married? You know, that kind of thing. And I think it's important to take a step back and take a break and breathe and, you know, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I? What am I all about? What do I stand for? What are my negotiables? What are my non-negotiables? And take it easy. Go baby steps, because you really don't want to jump into the next relationship and make the same mistake.
Well, my question goes back a step, and that is, let's say you have two married people, and they're not communicating well, but they're entrenched in years of having those, those particular models of communicating, and they're destructive.
Right.
Are you able to coach people into a whole new way of communicating? Is that possible?
Right. It is possible.
Is it?
It's absolutely possible, but there has to be buy-in. We get stuck in ruts of behavior. And when we get stuck in ruts of behavior, they really stalemate us. They don't allow us to see any clearer or move forward. And so what I do in my coaching practice is, it's like an onion. I'll peel back the layers of the onion to figure out exactly, where these behaviors came from in the first place. And we'll work step by step, slowly and efficiently and effectively as to finding out, why you're having this difficulty in your conversation and why you feel this way, and moving forward, moving beyond that, changing mindset, changing perception.
Okay, so can you stick around for a few more minutes and we will take a break. When we come back, talking relationships with Lauren Millman, relationship coach and communication specialist. This is What She Said on Sirius XM 167, Canada Talks. We are talking relationships with relationship coach and communication specialist Lauren Millman. And again, if you'd like to join the conversation, 1-855-958-8255. I'm Sharon Caddy with Christine Bentley. And Lauren, when people get into conflict, I guess the big word, the big emotion we all have to deal with is anger. And anger is a tough thing to harness, isn't it?
Anger is a tough thing, very tough thing, because it's our immediate go-to. We're wired to react. And the trick is to rewire our thinking to not react, but to respond. And that's really hard for a lot of people.
Well, because anger is infectious within ourselves and with other people, because when you start arguing with someone, it's immediate. They argue back and it just escalates. And I guess this can actually be what spells the end to a relationship sometimes. Not controlling that anger.
Absolutely. And we feel it coming, and when we feel it coming, we immediately go into defense mode. And everything is shot to high heck before it even starts. So I've got this great example. And I ask, have you ever really wondered why we react? Because we don't have to. I mean, we can choose not to react. We can choose not to make it about ourselves and we're the other person's behavior and reaction, and keep the situation calm and diffuse the other person and help the conversation get to the end that we all want.
But is it the want to win?
I think the want to win is a huge drive. I think the other huge drive is to be heard. Yeah. I think a lot of times we're so afraid of not being acknowledged and not being validated that we just immediately go into defense mode and win mode, and nothing ends up happening.
So if we're dealing with relationships and confrontations, conflicts, and ultimately having to learn how to deal with anger, how do we learn how to recognize it and how to diffuse it?
Okay, well, the first thing to do is, we all get angry. And so the very first acknowledgement that we need to make within ourselves is acknowledging that I get angry and it's not effective. It's not going to help the situation, and to commit to the commitment of not getting angry and to breathe.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is in families, you say that you need a buy-in, but there are families who communicate in such a dysfunctional way, and then you watch the parents and they become the role model for the children, and maybe they all realize that they have to stop it, but it's really hard. So could they bring in a coach like you, even though maybe a couple of the kids are not buying in, are rude, let's say, and aren't quite buying into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Parents, I'm a parent of 3 children. We have to lead by example, and we have to recognize that we're not leading as we should, and we have to change the tone of the conversation. We have to change where we're going with the conversation, and look within ourselves and realize that there's a lot of dysfunctional vocabulary and verbiage going on, and we're going to change that. And mom and dad or whoever's doing the parenting has to sit down and rework their thinking and rework what they're saying.
So if you, let's say, had a family that came to you and said, look, you know, we recognize we're not communicating properly, and we don't like the tone of our family communication, how would you handle that? Do you start with the parents? Do you start with everybody? I mean, how, if somebody came to you?
Right, absolutely. So that's a great question. So I would sit down with both parents. We would have a session first together, and then I would have 2 separate sessions with them as individuals and find out, you know, what's going on. Why are they behaving this way? And we all have reasons for our behaviors. The objective is to figure out what those reasons are and get to the bottom of those reasons, understand those reasons, and create some new thinking.
But the thing is, parents would likely come to you and say, I don't like the way my kids talk to me. And I've tried to discipline them, and I don't like the way they talk to one another. And I don't like, you know, people aren't always completely, you know, cognizant of the fact that they may be the problem.
They don't ever turn the mirror onto themselves.
Right.
So how do you diplomatically do it so that you solve the problem in the family without, you know, because they're not going to come to you and say, you know what, I have a problem, and my husband has a problem, and now our kids have a problem, and we need to fix this. They're going to come and say, we have a problem with the kids. They swear at one another, or they whatever, or they slam doors, or they kick in walls, or whatever. They're going to probably think it's the kids. Because, hey.
And who wants to blame themselves? Because that's onerous, and that's responsibility.
That's what teenagers are for, to be blamed for everything, right?
Yep.
But, you know, as a parent, this is parenting. We have to recognize within ourselves where the gap is and where we're falling short. And that's a huge step. That's really, really hard, and that doesn't happen overnight. So a parent would come in, and I would ask them, you know, where is the communication falling down? Why is the communication tearing itself apart? How are you communicating with your children? And quite frankly, if you're coaching with me, I'm calling a spade a spade. You know, you're sitting in front of me, you're paying me money to help you, I'm going to help you. I'm going to try to be as delicate as I can about it, but honestly, if I think that there's some miscommunication or some language that could be changed so that you're leading better by example and that your children start hearing you and you're feeling better about how you're speaking, I'm going to tell you.
Well, this is all great, and thank you so much, Lauren, for coming in. And people you even do sessions on Skype, I understand.
Yes, I have 2 offices here in Toronto, and I Skype internationally.
2 offices in Toronto?
2 offices in Toronto.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Nice.
Because you have people working for you, or?
No, I run my own practice, but I share my time between an office in downtown Toronto and up in York Region.
Perfect. And then you also do Skype sessions for international clients?
I do Skype sessions for anybody who needs help, who wants a happier, better, more connected life.
And along with 2 offices and Skype sessions and 3 children, she also finds time to write. So you're a super mom.
Well, not really, but thank you. Such a pleasure being here.
Yeah, great having you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.